August the 18th, 2023. Guys, you're looking at a very wide satellite image of this side of the northern hemisphere. Africa's to the left, the Pacific Ocean is to the right. Now, you've got a Cat 4 Hurricane Hilary that's moving up towards California. We're going to take a look at the tropical path of this, or the probable path, and depending on if it comes ashore down into the Baja Peninsula before it hits Southern California, it may be slowed down to a Category 1 or a tropical storm by then. Right now, Category 4, though, and they haven't had a storm like this really in about 97, 98 years. And that's really before they had a lot of measuring devices. You had barometric pressure and wind speeds, things like that, and the amount of rain. But they didn't have the technology that you're looking at now. We're going to go there, and we're going to look at some of the history of that storm that came in. You had one in, I think, 1978 or something that came through there, and it slowed down, but it dumped a lot of rain in that area, and it wiped out the raisin crop in Southern California for that year. The storm back in the 1800s, guys, it tore roofs off houses. It flooded the streets. It was pretty chaotic. There's a couple of images of some of these storms we'll take a look at. Now, notice over the U.S., you've got this dome of high pressure that's setting up, and everything as far as storms is rotating around it. If it's coming from the south, it's going to get caught up and it's going to move this way, keeping very warm and moist. But what we're having is a front that's pushing down out of Canada with cool air, and where they meet along the east coast is going to be a lot of trouble. But what we're about to do is go through the hottest part of the summer for the next week or two. We'll get some relief along the coast, Florida and some of the Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, due to tropical movement. But let's take a look at this, guys, and just let you see what's going on again. Here's Hilary, Cat 4 right now. You've got this system that is predicted to move into the Gulf of Mexico and bring rain into Texas or Mexico 1. We'll take a look at the latest models. Here is the largest of the three systems that are in the Atlantic Ocean. Here, this one's, and then this one. Now, this one more than likely will move north because of the elevation it's already at, but these two now are going to maybe trap behind some high pressure that's building and make it a lot closer than we thought they would when we started watching these a few days ago. Now, this was updated 6 a.m. Mountain Time today, not that long ago. Now, the storm is right here at 145 mile per hour sustained winds. It's moving west-northwest at 13 miles an hour. The brown area, that is the area with tropical force winds, and the darker brown area under the X, where it was at 6 a.m. Mountain Time, is the hurricane speed winds are in that section. Very powerful center core of this thing. Now, the white cone indicates the possibility of the track inside these two black lines. In other words, this storm is predicted by the National Hurricane Center, as far as the center, to be somewhere in this white cone area. See this? That's not the size of the storm. This is, and it's actually larger than that, counting the outer bands. As it moves forward, it's going to remain a major hurricane through noon Saturday. By noon Sunday, because it's getting closer to the Baja Peninsula, slow down to a Category 2 or 1 hurricane. It's going to continue to do that if it follows the center of this track right through here. But if it comes to the outside, check this out, guys. It's going to miss the Baja altogether and come in possibly as a Hurricane Cat 1 or 2 instead of a tropical storm into Southern California. Now, you're not used to that. Most of you have never seen that if you've been there all your life. But anyway, that's what we're looking at. By 12 a.m. Monday, this thing's going to be, whether it's coming through the Baja or coming ashore in Southern California, missing the Baja, 12 noon Monday, it's going to be coming ashore. Now, the winds and stuff are going to be out in front of it. It could bring some much-needed rain. And look at where this thing is at by Tuesday, 12 a.m., guys, in Oregon, where you've got these forest fires, Washington, Idaho. You guys must be really praying for a break on those forest fires, and I don't blame you, because it would be great for everyone in the nation if Canada and the Northwest could get together and fight these fires. Of course, we're sending all of our money and planes overseas right now. No one cares about Hawaii or any of this. They know that Babylon's days are over, and they're going to bug out as soon as they get the chance, as soon as they start pushing triggers. But again, 12 a.m. Tuesday, that's not that far away. This is Friday. Up into Oregon and Idaho. Just watch along this area. You've got a lot of mountainous regions from California up into Oregon and Idaho, guys, for flash flooding. If you're in low-lying areas, don't count anything out as far as what Mother Nature's throwing at us the last 2 years. And we're about to get into some heavy tropical systems on the other side of the nation, too. And let's look here in the Gulf and on the Atlantic side for a moment. We still are watching the system here that's predicted to move right through this area. You've got a 30% chance of development. It says this disturbed weather is located just north of Hispaniola. Is forecast to move into the Gulf of Mexico by early next week, where a broad area of low pressure could form. Some slow development of this system is possible thereafter as it moves westward and approaches the western Gulf of Mexico coastline by the middle of next week. Again, could bring much needed rain. Notice Louisiana, you're in this area too. So just depending on the size of it and how much moisture is involved. But this thing is going to be moving into very warm waters. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Now what's happening here in the back, I've noticed that instead of moving quite so north, some of these storms are starting to level out in this direction. Check it out. And this one here is already predicted to be in the danger area of the Caribbean. Now this second storm here is 30% chance of development for it now. It says another area of low pressure could form in a day or so from an elongated trough of low pressure located several hundred miles to the east-southeast of the Lesser Antilles. Some slow development of this system is possible over the weekend and into early next week as it moves generally west-northwestward at 10 to 15 miles per hour across the Lesser Antilles and into the northeastern Caribbean Sea. Behind it, again, they're not pointing quite as far north. I think they're starting to understand what's happening with the high pressure system. It's shifting, in other words. This one, number 2, 40% chance of development. It says an elongated trough, part of that system, and we'll look at it on the satellite images, that stretches all the way across these 3 storms. It says this elongated trough of low pressure, located roughly halfway between the Cabo Verde Islands and the Lesser Antilles, is producing some disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Environmental conditions are only marginally conducive for further development of the system, but a tropical depression could still form during the next couple of days while it moves west to northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour across the central tropical Atlantic. Thereafter that, upper-level winds are forecast to become unfavorable for any further development. We'll keep an eye on it. Back here, guys, you've got 70% chance of development. Now, this thing more than likely is going to move up north. It's far enough back, and it's already up into the area of the Cabo Verde Islands here. I just don't see it making it through. But the high pressure is going to control all of this. Now, as we take a look at these satellite images, the sun's rising, and you can see it changing to visual images. Everything that was on that map we just looked at with the 3 systems here and the one here is not including what they're watching in the Caribbean as far as some formation there. That was the really powerful system that we were watching last night. Again, I'm going through it with you this morning, but here's the large storm at 70% chance of development. Again, I think it's going to turn north, and these 2 will be limited on depending on the upper level wind shear. But once they become a tropical storm, they can strengthen from there. If they never make it to, or tropical depression, if they make it that far, then you're going to start to see some rotation, and then you really got to pay attention to it. But you can see it here, the tropical, all the signs of a tropical hurricane right there, and it's supposed to develop, but I think it's going to move up into the Saharan dust layer and become a non-event for the U.S. Now, you guys up in the U.K. and everything, watch for that storm. But here, you're starting to see high-level rotation. If you look at it, both in visible and the night images, infrared, right in there. So when this pushes into this area, it's all going to come together inside the Gulf of Mexico itself. Now, going to Fox Hurricane or Sky Tower radar, which is Fox 13 down in Florida, this is the larger storm in the rear. Pretty much everybody's sending it north. If it's going to get a break in that high pressure area momentarily before it closes, and I think that's what we're going to see. All the models are indicating it. The CMC is here, and the Navy model is here, so it's keeping. What you notice with those two models is that as it starts to turn north, the high pressure catches it and dips it back down. Look at the Canadian model, and then allows it to come back in as the pressure moves north. But this is a strong storm. Let's look at the middle storm. Now, this was updated at 7:30 a.m. We don't have the new ones in, but you can see this one's going to make it much further towards the west because of, again, the high pressure system. I know I keep bringing that up, but that is the steering factor here. You've got the Canadian model here. The Navy model is very close to that. And so we don't know exactly where it's going to go, and neither do these models yet. But they are moving more to the west towards the U.S. than the back model. Now, let's take a look at the setup of the Atlantic from the Canadian model. High pressure is in place now. This is the 18th. The storms are not going to be able to push through this orange area of high pressure until you see a gap form through here. Then it's going to change everything that we've been looking at. First thing you'll see, these storms come off. These storms here strengthen. One comes off the African coast. This storm here comes into the Mexico-Texas border now, according to the models. Not predicted to be large, but maybe a lot of rain. And the Caribbean system here is going to get into this area. This is going to open. You're going to see greens and blues through here. The storms will be allowed to pull north. At that point, the Caribbean system is going to split. Part of it's going to be pulled over the eastern tip of Canada, right into this area and into that low pressure zone. But the other side of the split is going to be stuck into the Caribbean. And as the model pauses, we'll look at it. You'll notice that the second section of the storm is between Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula. Let's play it forward. Here's our high pressure system about to form an opening. You already see it bending, and look right there, guys. That's the opening of low pressure that's going to try to close back, but it's kept these storms relatively to the south instead of moving straight to the north. This one coming off of Africa. Here's the one coming into Texas, Mexico. Here's our Caribbean storm right here. It's going to split in two. Half of it's going to follow this low pressure area up into the northeast. The other half, notice, will be right here, again, Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula. That high pressure changing daily, guys, changes the whole picture. But we're going to watch this throughout the updates, morning updates and the evening updates, because we're in this time to where we're going to get a very powerful storm because of this heat, maybe more than one. Things are really starting to fire up. Now, I want to go back to the system that's coming into California and a brief history of that. Now, you're looking at our website, BPearthWatch, and if you pull down under current news, Tina puts these articles here. She studies through these and puts some that are relevant to what we're looking at. And she put this one up this morning and showed it to me. It says it's a look at California's brief history with hurricanes and tropical storms. We're going to take a look at that, but I'm not going to go through the whole article, and embedded in that article are some other links that will go back into more detailed history. Some of you guys that live there want to really look at it, but we're going to hit on some of the main topics. But click there. Now, this is going to take you to KTLA 5, and you can, again, you'll have the link there, but it's basically, if you put KTLA.com /history of hurricanes and tropical storms, this will come up. What they're saying is, with Hurricane Hilary likely to hit Southern California as either a weak Category 1 or a tropical storm, meteorologists are revisiting some of the previous tropical cyclones to hit the Golden State in recorded history. There haven't been many. Thanks to cooler ocean water temps and a regional high-pressure system, storms rarely gain or hold enough strength to make landfall as either a tropical storm or a hurricane in California, but there have been a few occasions when they have. Now go back to 1939. It says September 1939 saw the only tropical storm to make landfall in California in the 20th century. The storm began as a tropical depression off the coast of Panama and quickly grew into a hurricane. The lowest pressure was at 28.67 inches, occurred on September 22nd, when the storm was centered approximately 300 miles southwest of Cabo San Lucas, according to NOAA. 2 days later, the weakening storm reached California's Catalina Island, where southeast winds gusted to 50 miles per hour. The storm eventually made landfall near San Pedro, bringing torrential rains that totaled more than 5 inches in the LA area. Mount Wilson there received 11.6 inches of rainfall. And they've went back and found one of the images there from that time. Check out these automobiles. But this was, let me pull it down just a moment. This is Long Beach, tropical storm, 1939. Look at the flooding. They said it looked like the streets had been swept with thousands of brooms. Everything was so clean. And there's footage that shows the rain and coastal storm surge caused widespread flooding that washed away homes and vehicles. 45 lives were lost at sea, and property losses were estimated to be $2 million. Guys, that would be closer to billions nowadays. Then you had Hurricane Norma in 1978. It says longtime residents might recall the effects of Hurricane Norma reaching Southern California in September of 78. The system evolved from a tropical disturbance 400 miles west of Acapulco and reached Category 4 hurricane strength as it grazed Socorro Island south of the Baja Peninsula. By the time it had reached California, it had weakened to a tropical depression, but still packed a punch. Up to 7 inches of rain fell in some locations. California's raisin crop was decimated, suffering the largest loss on record. Damage from the storm exceeded $300 million. The storm also produced a rare summer blizzard on Mount Whitney that killed 4 people. Now, both of those had slowed down of the 3, but in 1858, it was called the San Diego hurricane. They didn't have satellite images to go by then. Back then, you had wind and mainly barometric pressure, I think. Historical records are limited, and no footage exists. But the only known hurricane to hit California arrived on October 2nd, 1858. It says researchers compiled all known newspaper and weather reports from that period for NOAA. And you can click on this blue link, and it will take you to a PDF to where you can look at more details. But it says on October 13, 1858, the San Diego Herald published this vivid account of the storm. It reminds me how they reported the Galveston storm back in those days. It says about 11 o'clock a.m. of Saturday the 2nd instant, a terrific gale sprung up from the south-southeast and continued with perfect fury until 5 p.m. When it somewhat abated and rain commenced to fall, it blew with such violence and the air filled with such dense clouds of dust that it was impossible to see across the plaza. And it was with the greatest difficulty that pedestrians could walk the streets. The damage of property was considerable. Houses were unroofed and blown down, trees uprooted, and fences destroyed. It is said to have been the severest gale ever witnessed in San Diego. The next day, the daily Alta California newspaper correspondent in San Diego filed this report. It said the streets and alleys and roads from a distance as far as yet heard from were swept as clean as if 1,000 brooms had been laboriously employed for months. The scenes the next day were unpleasant to witness. People were standing here and there in groups discussing and relating the effects of the storm and the private injuries and losses sustained by them. Wind damage was largely confined to the coastal areas from San Diego to Long Beach, but heavy rains produced flooding inland. And you're going to have that, guys, because it's dry there. You've got mountainous regions, and you're going to have flash flooding. You're also going to have a lot of wind, so be prepared for power losses. Be prepared for flash flooding. As it gets closer to you, we will know more about it. But right now, If it stays off the shore of the Baja Peninsula, more than likely you're going to get a Cat 1 hurricane. It comes ashore slightly there and weakens, tropical storm. But you saw in these first two reports of the only three they could find that there was heavy damage in all three, even the two tropical storms. Guys, we're watching this. You watch it. Check the full article out over on BPearthWatch.com. Heads up, be safe.